Google checked, they made a big change in 2018, which was nicknamed the Medic Update, which was basically where they made big changes that vastly affected therapists and anybody else who's offering medical or wellness advice. I know the counselling directory at that time took a big hit and have had to change their website considerably in order to get back up again. So Google does change the goalposts, and you'll find out a little bit more about the things that you need to do because you work in the wellness industry that will help your website to be seen on Google, because you may find that you're being quote unquote punished without realising it. So without further ado, I shall ask to be allowed to share screen if I'm not already. And I will shut my emails up because it keeps telling me I've got an email, so that needs to go. Yes, so Linda or Janet, you need to enable share screen for me, please.
Done. Okay.
Thank you. So this is the bit where it usually covers my entire screen and doesn't let me do what I want to do, so bear with me a minute. I have two screens, so sometimes it opens on the wrong one. There we go. Perfect. Wonderful. So can everyone see a white screen with the word Google on it?
Yep. Yep.
That means it worked. I'm happy. Okay. So Google itself only serves three primary functions. One is to crawl the internet. So it goes across all of the internet, and that's a very big place, looking for content. By the way, this was the first time I'd ever put together a keynote. So there's some really odd animations because I was playing with it and very excited that I knew what I was doing. So bear with me. Anna, what's up?
Do you want to record this or not?
Holding it.
I can send out the slides. Are we recording it, Linda?
Showing is recording on mine.
No, it says it's recording on mine now.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so it crawls the internet, indexes the internet, so basically puts it in some sort of logical order for Google, and it ranks it in order of importance. And that's very broad, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it does that in a minute. So Google, really, all it wants to do is when somebody types something in the search engine, it just wants to give the right answer. That's how it makes its money, because its adverts are based on that as well. So without giving a good result, when somebody types something into the search engine, it doesn't have a business. I am talking really about Google only. There are other search engines. You may have heard of Bing or Yahoo. They're crap. So Google has just under 98% market share of the search engine world. So that's why we talk about Google, and the other two copy Google. So if you know this, you're all right. So it uses a computer algorithm, so a piece of software called a bot, or you may hear it called a spider. And it looks at every single page it wants to index. So although it will know your website is linked to each other because they will have the same www name, what it does is it only looks at one page in context of who the search result is meant for. So most people concentrate on their homepage, and that's a very good idea, but actually all of your pages matter because Google might not necessarily show just your homepage to somebody. So it crawls the internet and uses a spider to look at each page that it wants to index. And then when it gets to that page, it will look for links on that page to see if there's any other content that you've got that it might also want to index into its organization. So I've put some icons in this talk. So when you see these icons, it means it's something that you could do for yourself if you're able to access your website content yourself. So can Google actually find your pages in the first place in order to crawl them? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of things that you can try on the internet. So it's worth writing them down, but I can share these slides with you as well. I can email them out to anybody that wants them at the end, if you want to try later. Because there's a couple of things that you would need to go on Google itself to do, and obviously you can't do that while you're watching this. So you can check which pages your website Google has indexed. So just because it can look at your website doesn't mean it's going to. And that's one really important thing, because I think everyone assumes Google saves everything, and it doesn't. So I've got an example here of a website called jello.com. And so if you go into the search bar and you put site:jello.com, or well, actually it would be the name of your website, and you don't put any spaces, then it will show you what pages it has listed and indexed. So in this case, you can see some of the pages it's indexed here. We've got monster jigglers, mango tart. And at the top of the search result, it will also show you about how many pages it has indexed from that website. So it says here that jello.com has got about 85 pages. So it's either not a very big website, or maybe not all of its pages have been indexed. So it gives you a good rough idea of what Google has looked at on your website and what it has saved. And if I go too fast at any point, just say, Claire, give me a minute.
I will do.
So can Google crawl through your content to find more content? So it's important that it can move around your website, because the more content of yours it can find, the more it will index, and therefore it is more likely to be shown to somebody. So the spider needs links on your pages in order to do that. That's how it knows there's other content to look at. So links can be found in navigation menus, which almost all websites have. It can be suggested other reading. I don't know if you've ever been on a website and you've read a post, and then at the bottom it says, here's some other articles you might like to read. And it can be links within the text, which are called hyperlinks. So those are the things where it might highlight or have a line underneath it, and you click it and it'll open another page. So here's an example of Find Therapy here in one of its earlier incantations. And so we have links along the top, which are the navigation menu. We have suggested other reading at the side here on this page. We also have what's called an external link, which is a link that goes to Facebook when you click it. And we also have links to tags and categories of other different articles and suggestions. So these things are all clickable, which means these are things that Google will use to crawl through and check other areas of content on the internet. So this is how Google interprets and stores your website and your pages. And for the sake of this presentation, if any of you have a blog, those are often called posts. Google thinks they're pages too, just to confuse things. So everything where there's content on your website is called a page. But just because it can store your pages, it doesn't mean that it will. It needs to have a reason to. So common mistakes that people sometimes make. And this is something that some web developers make. So if it's something you notice on your website, then it's something to ask a web developer to change. And that's the menu on the desktop sometimes has different items to the mobile version of the website. So quite often websites nowadays are what we call responsive. So it's exactly the same website. It just, when you go smaller onto a mobile device, it just rearranges itself differently. It doesn't matter if the menu turns into a button or not. It's the stuff that you can click on. So a lot of people have About Me, Contact, Blog, Home. Those are common pages. If you had About Me, Home and Contact on the desktop version, and then when it went to the mobile version, it only said Blog, and it didn't have those other things, then Google won't know which one it's supposed to show. It's almost like two versions of your website. It's not common for that to happen nowadays, but some people who've got older websites might have that because mobile wasn't so popular before. It might have user-specific personalization, so each user has their own version of the homepage. Now, the Therapist Network does exactly that. So when you log into the Therapist Network, you, as a member, will see a different page to what the public will see when they're not members. But I've told Google I don't want it to rank those pages because they're for members only anyway. So it's only if they're public versions. If you've got a different version of the same page twice, Google won't know which one to show. So these are the sort of things that a web developer or somebody with similar expertise can fix, if you notice. And there's also something called broken links, which if it's within the text of your website, something you can fix yourself. So you can check and fix this easily if you can access your own content. So there is a website called brokenlinkcheck.com, and it's completely free to use. If you put in your website and find some broken links, don't panic. That is normal. Most websites have a few broken links. Sometimes an image will be deleted and so it won't work. You know, the picture won't show anymore. That counts as a broken link. Sometimes you may have linked to somebody else's material and their website no longer exists, so that will become a broken link. So it's very common. The less broken links, the better. Ideally none. But don't panic if you put your website and you find some. Just go ahead and try and find where they are and fix them if you can. So I'm going to do, this goes a little bit fast. So basically I've done a little video of me doing a broken link checker on a website called givig.com with the website owner's permission. But what I've done is I've shortened it. I've edited it to be shorter because it's a big website. So it takes a long time to look at all of the pages and find the broken links. So I'm just going to play that now. So it's going to find a broken link that's called contact and it has a % sign in it. So it doesn't work, that link. Not because it's got a % sign, it just doesn't work. So I'm going to click on to the side of the broken link it's found, I'm going to click on URL and that will show me the page that has the broken link within it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over contact bits on the page. When you hover over a link in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you will see where the link is going to go to. So I'm trying to find one that matches the one that I saw on Broken Link Checker. And I know which one it is because it's got a % sign in it, so it's quite distinctive. There it is, bang. So that's the one that doesn't work. So then I can log into that website, find that and put the correct link in, or just delete that button altogether if there isn't a correct link to put in. So you can also find out when Google last indexed your pages. So you can look at the fact that it has indexed, but you can also see when it did it. So again, the internet's a very big place, so it doesn't look at your website very often. There is a thing that you can do on Google that will allow you to check. And basically, you know, when you get the search results, you put your website in the search and you get the search results. So I'll show you now. So here we've got the Therapist Network. So I put in site : to see which pages are indexed. Then I put the website name with no gaps. And you get a list basically of the search results. So these are some of the pages that have been indexed on the Therapist Network. And if you can see on the links there, it says, let's say for instance, the contact us. Can you see that one? Above in grey, you've got the actual links. It says https:/therapistnetwork.com, contact us. And just to the right of that is a little grey triangle. I don't know if you can see, and I'm going to show you a video of me doing it in a minute. When you click on that, it will show you the cached version of the page. So basically the one that Google currently has saved. And it will also tell you what date and time it saved it and what the page looked like at that time when it did it. So it's quite interesting to have a look at this. So as you can see, this version was cached on the 25th of September. I did this video a while ago. It does say that the current page may have changed. So this is basically the snapshot of what Google saw when it last looked at that website. And it will show you it as it saw it at that time. So the reason why that's useful is because you may have made a change on your website. So say, for instance, you've updated a piece of text, or you've put a new blog up or something like that, and there's, you know, crickets, no response, and you're thinking, God, why hasn't anybody seen this? It's worth having a little check. So it may just be that Google hasn't indexed it yet, so it hasn't caught up. And if you're any good with tech, or if you have a web developer, you can actually ask for your page to be indexed. So you can tell Google, I want my website and these pages to be indexed, please. And it will look at it quicker than if you're just waiting for it to do it organically. And by quicker, I mean within 3 months. So it's often 48 hours, but I've known it take a lot longer. Depends on, again, if you've got a really big website, then it takes a long time to index. If you cannot see the page that you wish when you enter site : and then your domain name, then it means it's not been indexed. Google doesn't know it exists or hasn't bothered to look at it. So this is something a web developer or an SEO expert can help with. You need to create a site index and submit it to Google via something called Search Console, which is something that you can set up to look at your pages and your links and see how many clicks and things you're getting. So if it's something that's outside of your area of expertise, you can get a web developer or somebody who knows SEO to do that. And the reason I've included this in the talk is because then you won't get bombarded with people trying to give you tech speak and stuff like that. You know exactly what to ask for. You just say, I want a site index and I want it put on Search Console, and that's it. You can use the site index, the file, to tell Google which pages you want it to index. But also, really usefully, you can tell it which pages you don't want indexing. And the reason you might want to do that is because although it's just milliseconds, it takes time for Google to look at all of the pages on your website. So the quicker we can make that for Google, the more easy it finds it to navigate your website, the more likely it is to use it. So we wouldn't want it to show in search results a login page, perhaps, or your privacy information, your terms and conditions. Those aren't things necessarily you want showing up in search results, because people aren't likely to click on that and read it. You do want them on your website, but not necessarily in search results. So you can tell it which ones you don't want showing as well, and that makes it all a bit faster. If you've got WordPress for your website, then there's some excellent plugins that will do this for you for free. So they create a site index, and all you have to do is put it on Search Console. So is there anybody, hands up if you use WordPress? Yeah, so a couple of people. So basically the two plugins I recommend, Yoast, which a lot of people have heard of, and they're very well known, but they've got some really hot competition with a plugin I've been trialing called Rank Math, which actually makes SEO a lot easier. And I like it better than Yoast, which is hard for me to say because I've been a fan of Yoast for many years. So if you've got WordPress and you want to ask me about that, we can get in touch afterwards. So the ever-changing goalposts of Google, just because they're saying they're doing it now doesn't mean they're going to do that tomorrow. Search engines want to provide their users with the most useful answer to their search and in the most useful format. That's all they're interested in. So the great news is this is something a lot of you can control if you've got access to your own content, if you can write your own words on your website. So how does Google decide? It uses an algorithm, another algorithm called PageRank. This has got nothing to do with pages themselves. It's just named after its creator, Larry Page. So PageRank measures links. It measures something called rank brain, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. And it measures your content. and it measures EAT, which I will go into more detail because this is the thing that's important for the wellness industry, the EAT. So links are content linked within your site, as we've already talked about, and content that comes from other websites that advises you. So if say, for instance, you write a blog on another website and you put your website address in it, that will link to your website. So that's stuff coming from outside of your own website. RankBrain is the artificial intelligence. So it's technology that learns how users behave on search results and it adjusts itself accordingly. So basically Google's learning all the time. The RankBrain is learning all the time about the sorts of things people type in, the kinds of spelling mistakes they make, when the search results are wrong and they skip back out again. It learns all of this. It's learning about semantics and how people use language. And then it will adjust the rules and the goalposts accordingly, because all it's interested in is showing the right results to the questions asked. It looks at content, so it will look at if somebody actually clicks the link. So when you get the list of search results, is it your website they click on? It looks at how long they spend on that page when they look at your website. It looks at bounce rate. So bounce rate sounds more bouncy than it is. So basically what that means is somebody clicks on your website page, they read the content on the page, and then they go somewhere else. So they don't continue to look at other parts of your website. That's what bounce rate means. They just look at one page and nothing else. And something called pogo sticking, which is an industry term, and that's basically not your fault. That's if they give the wrong search engine results and somebody goes onto the website, goes, oh no, that's not right, and comes straight away off of it without spending any time on the website. So they look for their own mistakes too. And E, which is expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And this is only measured on websites which are known as YMYL, which is called Your Money or Your Life. And I'll talk a bit more about that later. So things that are very important are links. There's two kinds of links. There's something called a backlink, which is where website A will link to website B. They're also known as inbound links, and they're crucial because they're on your online word of mouth. And there's internal links, which we've already talked about, which is where a page on your website links to a different page on your website. And these allow the spiders to crawl through your site. So RankBrain, it learns searchers' behavior. It understands different language patterns and in many different languages. And it wants to provide the best possible user experience and the best information for the searchers that might land on your page. So what's really important, and the thing you can easily control, is your content. You can control your content. So one thing a lot of SEO people will talk about, and it is important, is using keywords. But I think when people are just starting to learn about SEO, concentrating too much on keywords can actually lose you rankings, because if you don't know how to use keywords correctly, then you can overdo it, and Google's very tetchy about keywording. So what I concentrate on people doing first of all is just write to your clients.
It's just
So
what?
just write to your clients.
Okay.
You know, if you know who you want to attract, then you write content that they will find interesting or useful. So it will answer their questions. It will solve their problems. And whenever anybody's on the internet, they're in it for themselves. So don't talk about yourself too much. Talk about what they get. So if you're offering a service, as most of you are, what happens when you receive that service? What do you get out of it? What does your client get out of it? So then they can start to build a trust relationship with you just by reading your website. So one of the things that Google has never, ever changed the goalposts on since 1998 is that all they're interested in is when they present a search result, that the thing you click on you find interesting and you want to hang around, because it means to them that they've done a good job. Okay, so the most important thing you can do is not worry too much about Google really, and concentrate on your potential clients, so the person that's going to be reading the content on your website. because if you get that right, then Google will come naturally. So content is more than just words. It's your images, it's the design of your site, how easy it is to use, it's videos, it's anything that the user will consume whilst they're on your website. But one thing to bear in mind is that Google can only read. It can't listen and it can't watch at the moment. It's getting there, it nearly can. So the focus is on user satisfaction. Therefore, and this is something Google have actually said, so they're usually really, really careful about things they talk about, and they don't give away much information about how they do their business and the things that they look at. We all have to just try and guess when things go wrong. So, but one thing that they have no strict rule on, and they have actually come out publicly and said that, is what you put in header tags. So there are things called header tags that make the content look a bit bigger. People sometimes use that to make things look bold, but actually what it does is it tells Google which thing you think is more important on the page. It's like a ranking order. And users of WordPress might be familiar with header tags more so than people who don't. It also isn't really all that interested in how often a keyword appears. There are some rough rules on things that people think is the best amount of keywording, but again, if you put keywords in and then you read the content back and it doesn't make sense, is your potential client or ideal user or the reader of the website really going to want to hang around and read that if it doesn't speak to them? And there's no strict rules on content length. So at the moment, what's in fashion is something called long form content. So that's 1,500 words and more. I have had a couple of successful blog posts that have only been 200 or 300 words. It really just matters what they're getting out of it, not how much of it you put in. They do all play a role. Google actually has over 200 metrics that it checks on a website to decide how to rank it. So PageRank looks at over 200 things. So the only thing really you need to concentrate on isn't Google, it's your user. So what in your content does it look at? So amongst those 200 things, it looks on things that people click on. And here comes the annoying animations. It looks at how much time is spent on the page. So are they hanging around and reading it? And it looks at bounce rate. So when they've read that page, do they look at anything else or do they bugger off somewhere else? And of course, not relevant to us, it looks at pogo sticking. So did they make a mistake in the results they gave? So one of the biggest factors in search results is clicks. And this is, again, how you write your content will affect that. So when they've got this list of potential websites to click on, when you look at search results, most people only do sort of like the top 4 or 5 on the first page. No one often clicks to page 2 or more. But Google takes a lot of notice of what they click on. So when it's given those choices, which one do you choose when you've got the results back? It looks at how long they spend there. Are they reading what you wrote? So it's worth knowing if you've got a long article, if you are able to check your Google Analytics and you look at it, it tells you how much time they spent on each page. So if you've got a long article and they're on that page for 1 minute, perhaps they just looked at the first paragraph and decided they didn't like it and went somewhere else. So that's something to bear in mind. Did they look at any other stuff on your website? So quite often I've looked at websites I've found interesting and I've read an article and it's suggested another article, or I've gone, this is interesting, I want to look at something else, or I've clicked a link within an article. And before I know it, I've been on that website reading the stuff that's been written for longer than I thought. And so you kind of end up lost in like a website world. And that's really good. That's really good because Google's going, oh yeah, not only have we given the right result, but they really like the result that they got. And obviously the pogo sticking, I'm going to skip that because it doesn't matter. So Rank Brain, so the artificial intelligence, it collects and uses data from several different places. It looks at Google Ads. It looks at the distance. So if you're a local business, then you need to have a local business listing because it will help your Google results. It looks at shopping pages. So if you sell products, It will automatically find them and list them if you index them. And it looks at citations. So Wikipedia being obviously a really obvious one there for citations. But most importantly, the relevance. So the person's typed in a thing in the search engine. Are you providing the answer? So how can you tweak this to get more clicks? So you or your website developer can make sure that your title is something that somebody might want to click on. So this is where, if you're writing blog posts, the title of your blog post can be quite important, because this is kind of like your little sales page. You've got less characters than a tweet to get someone to choose your website over the others. And you can do your snippet, which is also known as metadata. So that gives you just basically a sentence or two of what this web page is going to be about. And highlighted in there, I don't know if you can see on the first result, it says, I've put in the search jelly maker, and it's highlighted in bold, jelly maker, in the snippet underneath the first search result. So when it finds that, you see, the second one is interesting because it's highlighted jellies instead of jelly maker. So it knows that jelly and jelly maker and jellies and jellify are all similar things. It's almost human. So if you are talking about a jelly maker and your keyword is jelly maker, you don't have to repeat jelly maker all the way through your text. You can put making jellies, you can put people like jelly, you know, there's all sorts of different iterations around that word that you can use. Google will understand. And Google's got one last trick up its sleeve, and this is the big important one for us, and that's eat. And this came with a big change in 2018, about June time, I think it was. And they use humans for this, which is very unusual. It's a mixture of humans and AI. So here comes another crappy animation. So it's your money or your life. So EAT, as we said earlier, is expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So when they have found a website they've identified as your money or your life, which is basically you're going to put your credit card details into this website, so things where you purchase stuff online is a YMYL website, or where somebody is going to offer you advice that could have an effect on your life. So they're trying to protect people now from misinformation because they got in trouble for it before. So they look at your website for expertise, and if they decide that it is a YMYL website, then at some point a human will look at your website to help make these decisions. So they will compare you to your competitors. Do you appear to be more expert in your field compared to your competitors? They will check any medical claims that you've made and that they are backed up with scientific research and that you link to it in your text. So this is where citations come in useful. They will have a look around the internet and try and decide if you're known in your field. Are you networking? They want to know if you are, or if you use, world-renowned, that should say, not renounced, authors. So, you know, have you been reading up? Do you know your stuff and are you linking to them? They want to make sure that within the context of when you're giving advice that you are looking after the safety of the users. And I think a lot of professional bodies give good advice on this, you know, so not making claims that you can cure people and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's quite an extreme example, but, you know, I had a conversation with Jan the other day about how careful you have to be about how you word the way that you help people. And this is where you get a bit of a catch-22 as a therapist, is because one of the things Google ranks you on is whether you provide helpful advice in the search results, but also if you're a YMYL website, which all therapists are, whether within that advice you are doing it, you know, with the safety of the user in mind. So telling them to make sure that they check with their GP before they take any action and all that sort of thing. Whether you have verifiable qualifications, and this is something obviously we talked about a bit earlier, So if you have done a verifiable qualification, like Linda mentioned she does on her website, then put down that you did. And it's also a good idea somewhere to mention where you studied, so they can go and have a look and see if it's a real university or a real accredited body. They will check. And if you get published, so if you've written a book on Amazon, have you been published in any scientific papers? Do you help any other universities? And again, for some therapists, this isn't relevant, but it's one of the things that they will look at. If you're a published author or you're published somewhere, that's going to help boost it for you. Your authority. So if you do have other websites linking to you, are they good quality websites? So it's not just yale.com. So perhaps if you write an article for another expert in the field and they publish your article, it's always worth contacting your peers. Then that can help provide a good quality link to your website. Do other experts cite you? Are they talking about you and the things that you do? Do you use your personal experience instead of advice? They put this in because obviously not everybody is a top expert in their field. So when you're looking at all of these things that they're asking you to do, it can be really overwhelming, particularly if you're in a not very well-known therapy or if you're in a therapy that's new. So they're also asking, instead of just giving direct advice to people, are you actually using personal experiences or other people's experiences and talking about where it's worked for them? So this is where testimonials come in really handy. And I should add here, Google doesn't look at Facebook reviews. So if you're going to ask someone to do a review, ask for a Google one. Are people leaving positive comments on your website? So if you've provided really useful information, are you inviting them to comment below with their own thoughts on it? Are you mentioned in any news articles? So have you contacted your local news if you do an event or anything like that? And again, you don't have to do all of these things, but the more the better. Have you got quality author bios? So this has been particularly useful for websites that have other authors that write content. So for a lot of people, if it's just you writing your website, then all you need is an about me page. But if you're writing something for somebody else, you need a little bio at the bottom that says what you do, why you do it, and why you're qualified. And they quite often end with something like mine ends with, I like camping in the woods with my son, just to make it more personable. And how old is your business and how old is your website? So it will take notice. If you've been around for a while and you're still actively updating your website, then it will know that you're more likely to be more expert because you've been around for a while and you haven't disappeared or you haven't closed your business down. So quite often fakes don't last very long, or they change their name and move on to something else. And if you are an expert in your field, then get listed on Wikipedia. There's lots of hoo-ha about whether Wikipedia is a good thing to have or not. There is misinformation on Wikipedia, but if you're on it, it is something that Google will take into account. So if you're a human being looking at a website and this person is also on Wiki, it's going to help because of the rules you need to get on it. And do you appear trustworthy? So the question that the humans are asked to give themselves is, would I give this person my credit card details? So even if you're not actually asking for money on your website, they've got to ask themselves, just looking at what they've written and looking at the things that I've checked, would I be trusting enough? Do you appear trusting enough that I will give you my credit card details? Because at the end of the day, you're in business, so at some point you're going to need money off somebody. Are you authentic and do you appear authentic? Some people come across as inauthentic because they're nervous or they worry about professionalism, but you need to put a little bit of yourself into your website as well because people want to get to know you there. Does the business or the business owner have a good reputation? Have you got good Google reviews? Does your website have an SSL certificate? So that's where at the beginning it says HTTPS and you get a little lock sign on the next to the domain. So although there was a lot of hoo-ha about this, because if you are not asking people to type in their personal information into your website, you do not really need an SSL. But what Google and other search engines other browsers have done is if their website doesn't have an SSL, it comes up with a message saying this site is insecure. Are you sure you want to proceed? And then that frightens the user because they think you're going to hack them or something. So unfortunately, it is now almost imperative that you get an SSL for your website, because it just helps the user know that you're taking care of their security and their data. And whoever hosts your website should be able to provide that if they haven't already. And you will have to pay for it probably. Some of them do it free as part of their hosting, and some don't. Are you insured, and are you saying so? Are you salesy? Have you got cheap, nasty, low quality funnels, or are you actually giving quality information to people? Which is what I just said there. So things that you should do first, over and above everything else, as always, have valuable content. So think only with the end user in mind when you're writing content on your website. And again, there's no hard and fast rules about how much you do or how long it is or anything like that. It really is about the quality. I know some successful bloggers that only blog once a month. Some who don't have a blog at all, they just keep their website up to date with good information. If you can do your titles, make them about 60 characters, make it descriptive, so try and explain what's going on in the page. The reason it's roughly 60 characters is because what you want to be able to do, when it shows on the search engine results, you get that blue writing, don't you? That's your title. If it's too long, it falls off the end and nobody can read it in the search result. And it has to also be long enough to be read on a mobile device. So if you're searching on a phone, it's actually about 60 characters, sometimes a bit less, sometimes a bit more. Yeah, it depends on the size of the phone or the device you're using. So there's no hard and fast rule as the amount. It's roughly 60 characters. Be authentic. Cite evidence of any claims and cite any qualifiers that you may have. So if you've read an interesting piece of article, or you're looking at science or anything like that, in order to advise your clients or to explain what you do, then cite that and link to it. Make sure your homepage clearly states what you do and why. Some people, they land on the homepage and you don't really know what it is that you're getting. And at the end of the day, they're only in it for themselves when they look at your website. Your homepage gives you opportunities to explore the rest of the site. So are there links there? Can people look at other content from your homepage? And do your pages have a call to action? So are you asking the user to take some action? So either get in touch or have a look at this article, which links to that article, or anything that sort of gets them involved. So any kind of call to action. Quite often people have contact me, but try and use something a bit different sometimes. So depends on the page.
Sorry.
Is it a useful and usable site aimed at real people? So not written for Google. Does it use clear language? Is it simple and have no jargon? So one of the things that's well known in the marketing world is that once you know enough about your business, you know too much. You can't, it's really hard when you know your own business really well to write to somebody who knows nothing about it. It's really easy, and particularly in my field, incredibly easy to talk jargon and not even realize you've done it because you learnt about that such a long time ago. So it's worth getting other people to read your pages who don't know anything about what you do, so not your mates, and say, look, does this make sense? If you didn't know anything about anything, would this make sense to you? Do you know what I do? So it's always worth, I've sometimes put websites in my coaching group on Facebook, or even in a networking group if you're really brave, One of the things I do when I write new content is there's a little trick. Google will automatically index a page that somebody other than you has looked at. So if you post your website in a group and say, can someone spell check this and let me know if I've made any mistakes? One, people love pointing out mistakes, so they're likely to do it. And two, they'll look at your website and Google will index it.
I like that.
It's a win-win. And I'm terrible for that. Well, I wrote a blog post about how I leave a deliberate mistake in every page I do. So every page and post I make, I leave a deliberate mistake. I try not to actually, but then if I have made a mistake, I'm not embarrassed if someone points it out because it's a competition now instead. Focus on the end user at all times. So read it back to yourself and go, does this make sense to someone who knows nothing about what I do, but might have a problem that they want solving? So quite often when people ask me to audit or review their website, I'll look at it and I'll think, well, this tells me a lot about what you do and your qualifications, and that's all very good, but what it's not telling me is what I'm going to get. So I'm probably not going to hang around because I don't know what's in it for me. Oh, bugger. Ranking on Google can be a lot of work, and this is where people sometimes get a bit disheartened because it can feel overwhelming. Google looks at a lot of things, but all you really need to do is make sure that you're providing something valuable for the person reading it. That's it. It can have all the spelling mistakes in the world. You know, it can, there's all sorts of things that you can do. People talk a lot about keywords, and yes, they're useful. People talk a lot about all sorts of things on SEO, and yes, they can be useful, but it can get really overwhelming really quickly. And at the end of the day, all Google really cares about is that you're providing the right answer to the question they're typing in. So don't panic. Everybody's website is a journey, just like you are, just like your business are. It's a long-term thing, not something you tick off the to-do list. So you can take it one step at a time and it will be okay. Thank you.
Well done.
There we go, that's that.
Wow.
Huh. That was fast.
Sorry, yes, I know that it's a lot of information.
Are you sharing the slides?
Yes, I can send you the slides.
Because sometimes I was reading and then suddenly it would disappear.
Sorry, I did say you can tell me to stop. I don't know, I can't see what you're writing when I'm reading the screen, so
I didn't want to cut your flow because you were flowing, you know, you were.
And it's easy for me to get fast and jargonistic. One, I get excited, so I start talking faster anyway, because it's the sort of thing I really enjoy, which is just so geeky, isn't it? I know Anna will be with me on this one, the geekiness, but also it is a big subject and there is a lot to cover, and it can feel overwhelming. Some people do give a lot of okay advice, but it's not really very useful if all you want to do is just, you know, get on with your business. SEO is a full-time job in many organizations for more than one person, and you're doing everything yourself. So if you can just write content that people would like to read, that I think is the best skill you can learn over and above any SEO.
Can I just ask a question about something you said? Hang on one second. SSL certificate.
Yes.
So I would know if my website had that by putting it in the browser and seeing what comes up.
Yes. What's your website address? I can tell you if you have one.
It's Reflexology Works.
.com or .co.uk?
.co.uk.
Yes, you've got an SSL.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. That thing when it comes up about this page is not secure. It's happened to me with websites. And I thought, oh, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I get off it. You're right. Yeah. Mm.
So Claire, just to check with the SSL, you just put in site : and then your website name. Is that right?
So for the SSL, you just put in your website. I can share the screen and show you what I saw if Elizabeth doesn't mind me showing her website. So this is Elizabeth's website, and along the top here, you see it says HTTPS. The
Right.
S means secure, and it's got a little padlock. If the padlock is red or unlocked and it has HTTP without the S, that means you do not have an SSL certificate.
Ah, thank you.
Linda, you had a question.
I did. When you were talking about how to find out whether Google has indexed your pages or not, a couple of times you used the word cached. What does that mean?
It just means a saved version of.
Right.
Like putting it in a cache, in a.
Yeah, like holding it.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So just a second, Anna. Janet's next.
Where it's got sitejello.com, can you just explain what we have to do to find it's because it goes through to see what links you've got. So you actually just type in site.jello.com, or do you actually put in your own email address?
You put your own website address in there. So let me do yours. Oh, hold on. It's made a suggestion. I pressed enter too soon. What's your website address?
www.bayholisticcentre.co.uk.
Okay, so
When
I put in site:bayholisticcentre.co.uk,
Yeah.
we've got the home page.
Yeah.
We've got batch. It's batch, isn't it? Batch.
Yes. Oh, I see.
So you've got 6 pages have been indexed.
Yes.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to check theirs while we're here?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
I did mine while you were doing it on my phone.
So Linda's got 167 pages indexed with Google.
Wow. Wow.
Ooh, I haven't got that many on my website.
It's been a long time though.
Who's
Might
next?
have been up a few, well, not even a month. Yeah, just over a month.
Yeah.
Someone else said yes, please.
Yes, please. So mine's the CanterburyCoachingCentre.com.
I can't see all of you when I'm on share screen, so forgive me if I miss you.
41.
41, yeah, including embraining. So it'll list all of the ones that are indexed.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I've done mine, but there are like some links that I don't understand, like zconnect 2, zconnect 1. That's something that I didn't.
What's your website?
Oh, blossomfromwithin.co.uk. As you can see, there's a smaller, I don't know what that is. And
Let's have a look.
I don't know if it's a permalink or something. Oh, the name of the picture.
Yeah, so every bit of content will have a page of its own.
Okay, so how can I change that? Because that is the name of the picture and not from a post or a page.
So this
Google not to go to that page.
yeah. So this is where a site index can be useful. So you're on WordPress, aren't you, Anna?
WordPress, yeah.
Yeah. Do you use Yoast?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work with that. It's just there.
Contact me afterwards and I'll tell you how to tell it not to index that page.
Okay.
It doesn't do any harm. It knows Google will know that that's an image page. So they won't drop your ranking because you've got an image page cached. It just means that it's got more pages to look at on your website. So if you can tell it not to for the ones you don't want it to, then it's got less work to do. That's all that is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Can I just ask something?
Yes.
Whilst you were doing that, I did it on my phone. So I inputted site : blah, blah, blah. And I haven't got up something quite the same. What I've got up is, yeah, instead of a list like you've got, I've got little blocks of showing reflexology works, Elizabeth Williams, and then the pricing one, but it's set out in a different way. So is it something you can't do from Google on your phone? You need to do it on a laptop?
I've never tried it on a phone, but so I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid. This is what it looks like on the desktop. Is that completely different on the phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did mine on my phone. And I've got the list of all my pages, but what I haven't got is at the top where it says how many results.
That's right, yeah, I haven't.
But I've got the list of all my pages that have presumably been indexed.
Yeah, but they're set out slightly differently, are they? Like in a little box?
No, they're listed. Well, each one's in a box, but they're listed like this. But each one's in a separate box.
Yeah. So
just laying it out. It just lays out Google is a website as well, and it lays its own website out differently for mobile phones, just to make it read better. Otherwise, you've got to sort of scroll across to try and find things.
But you're right, there's no list of results, is there?
Right, that's good information. I'll include that next time I do the talk.
Can you see my screen, Claire? Because I can hold my phone up to the camera and you can have a look and see what you can see.
Hang on.
It's quite hard to see, I think. Let's have a look.
Yeah, I can see that.
So they're listed, but it doesn't tell you how many results at the top.
So that will have to be, if you want to see the number, then you'll have to do that on a desktop.
Yeah, that's how
mine. Or if you're on Google, you can go to the 3 dots at the top right, tap that and ask it to show the desktop site, and it will show you the desktop version.
Yeah.
3 dots on the top. Okay.
Yeah.
Trying to do this from memory. Anna, you had another question, didn't you? Or have you asked it now?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I have 2 more questions because I have testimonials on my website. It was like copy-paste from an email they sent me. And you spoke about Google review and also Wikipedia. So on Google review, how do you do that?
So do you have a business listing on Google?
I don't know what is that.
Right, let's see if I can find one.
Liz is just saying she's got a couple of questions, Claire, as well.
Okay, right, ignore that, that's an add-on I've got for keywording. So you don't actually have a listing, a business listing, so you won't be able to ask people to do Google reviews at the moment, Anna. It would come up on the right hand side here. I'll see if I can find one that has. Let me try mine. Oh, I better put .com. There's mine. So you see on the right hand side here, that's my business listing. So that's at business.google.com, where you can add your listing.
Okay.
And you have to have a Google account to do that, so a Gmail address or something like that.
Okay.
Claire, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to leave the meeting. I've got to pop out and do something before I've got another Zoom at 12. But thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this.
You're welcome. So if you want to email me any questions from today, if we don't get time to do them, then my email address is Claire, CLAIRE, at spinmyplates.com.
Spin My Plates. I like that title.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. I really appreciate that. It's lovely. Thank you so much. But I must fly.
Elizabeth.
Goodbye, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining.
Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And you wanted to ask me about Wikipedia, Anna?
Oh yes, it's Well, don't you need to be famous to be on Wikipedia?
So you
Oh,
need,
but
yeah, you need to be quite well known in your field to be able to pass through to get on. I've tried to get on Wikipedia before, so I was a photographer for 25 years, and I noticed another photographer had gone on Wikipedia, and I tried to go on and list myself on Wikipedia, and I just got rejected. But that was a long time ago, and I'm not an expert on Wiki at all. And it didn't tell me why. It just said I couldn't do it. So they're not known for being terribly useful, and I'm not very aware of what they do. I just know that Google sometimes looks at it to try and see if you know your stuff or not. So there must be some metrics that they check to see if you're well known in your field for some reason.
okay, thank you.
Is that it?
Liz?
Anyone else?
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you've answered one of them actually about Google My Business. So thank you. The other question I had is, can you just remind me how you do Google Analytics, or is that a separate talk?
Wow. Yeah, that would probably be a separate talk or some separate help. Do you have an analytics account?
I have no idea. I'm with Squarespace.
Okay, so I am not familiar with Squarespace, but you would need, basically when you start an analytics account, Google will give you a piece of code that needs to go in your website, and that will tell Google that it needs to link those pages to your analytics account to give the information. So it's like a permission thing. It's a bit of what's called script. And so most website builders will allow you to do that. It's very common. So I imagine Squarespace is a well-known business, so they'll probably have something there. I'd search their help section and put in Google Analytics and see if they've got some suggestions. But you will already need to register with Google Analytics to get the code to put into your website first. And then Google will verify with you. It can be, if you're not tech-minded, it can be a bit of a confusing process. So if you get stuck, give me a shout.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'll check that with Squarespace, but I also need to register with Google Analytics as well.
Yeah, so you'll need to go to, I can't remember their address for analytics. Hang on. Just
It sounds like it's quite important to do, is it?
It can be very useful. So it's analytics.google.com.
Analytics.
So it can be as complicated as you want it to be, analytics. So there is a lot of stuff there that you probably don't need to worry about. But things that I look at regularly is just the overall data of users. So how many people have been on the website. It can give you at the top of, when you are listed, I can't show you one because it's very protected information, it's people's data, but it will have basically a menu down the left, and it will say you can look at demographics, so you can get an overview of demographics. So are the people that are reading your website male or female? How old are they? Where have they come from? So did they click through to your website from Facebook, or did they find you on a search engine result? It will tell you how many people, and you can change the dates to see when people were looking at your website. It will tell you what countries they're looking from, whether they're using a mobile device or a desktop. So if a lot of people use mobile to look at your website, then that's something you need to check that it looks good on a mobile device.
Yeah.
And it will also tell you something that's really useful, which is called behavior flow. So it will give you like a flow chart of your site and what pages they found you on. So mostly it's the home page, but it won't always be the home page. What page they went to next, and if any more, which one they went to after that. So you can see what journey they take through your website, or if they just bugger off. So it will show you a red line then dropping off. So it's quite useful. I use that and Search Console, because Search Console tells me what search results I've been shown in. So if somebody typed in build a WordPress website and I was on that list of suggestions, it will tell me, and it will tell me what number in the list I was. So obviously if you're in like number 5 in the list, you know you went on the front page because there's only 10 listings per page.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I'll use a mixture of the two, but yeah, that can get quite technological quite quickly. So it's for another day, I think, or a different
I'll start with the content then.
Always. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Fabulous.
No more questions this end.
Yay.
Really helpful, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a lot of info, but I think it's good. When I first figured out how Google actually works, it was so complicated, and because everybody talks about all of the things that Google does, and everyone's got a different opinion on what's best, because Google really doesn't tell anybody. You have to guess. It's all guesswork. But you know, the one thing that they have come out publicly and said is that we really don't care so long as your users like it. Because then we're doing our job.
Hence the dark web.
Can we go back to
Yeah.
where we can see everybody, because we've still got your screen shared, so we can
Oh,
see
I'm so
everybody.
sorry, I didn't realise.
That's okay.
You get involved.
There we go. That's better. It was nice for it to be quite simple for us to understand without being too technical, and you gave us lots of things that we can do ourselves, which is a key part of it. Yeah.
I always worry when I talk about SEO because it can be really overwhelming, especially if you're just a small business and you've got one website and you're not very technical minded. You can be like, Jesus, I've got to do all this stuff, but you really don't. You know, your website is a small part of your overall marketing. So for some people, I've had people that have come to me and said, I need you to build a website, and I've questioned whether they even need one. And some people don't. So, you know, it's something where it's good to take a step back, because you can get lost in that world and then forget about earning money and getting clients, which is obviously something that's more important than a website. Your website is a tool to help with that, or to give more information. So generally there's two types of website. There's one that's like an extension of your business card, where you've just got a bit of extra information. When you talk to people, you'll refer them to it, and that's all it needs to do. And then you've got one which is where you're going to want to do SEO because you want it to get clients for you. And that's a long-term gain. So I would say to people, if you're working consistently, like once a week on your website, you can expect, if you're giving good content, for it to organically grow. It can be done in 6 months, but I usually say, put your head into a 3-year mindset, because it needs to just become a flowing part of your business, like just a part of everything that you do, and then it will slowly grow. And obviously the older it is, the more good reputation it will get to, so it all helps. But yes, so long as they get what they've got there for, then that's fine. Sorry, Anna?
So when you say work once a week at least, are you talking about a blog post or something different?
That really depends on you and how you run your business and what type of business you've got. So there's a lot of advice out there over how often you should blog or whether you should blog at all. And the reason why there's a lot of conflicting advice is because it's quite specific to you and your business. So it's difficult for me to answer that. I try to do something on my website once a week, just so Google knows that I haven't left it and fallen asleep. So it just keeps content fresh, and every time I look at it, I see a new spelling mistake or something like that. So I'm always just going in and checking the links and fixing those. And if it sees activity on your website, it knows that, because some people, they close their business, but they don't close their website. So there's a lot of stagnant websites out there on Google, and it has to try and figure out, is this person actually working? Do they actually have a business anymore? They might not know. So it's good to just sort of, if it sees updates, if you keep it up to date, your potential clients will also know that you're working and active.
Mine is not work once a week. And to be honest, it's been like a year that I don't work on it.
Yeah.
I know I'm changing the way I coach, the way I work. So everything that it's there, I have to delete and write all over again. So it will be like a complete change. But the fact that I'm on WordPress is really good. The fact that everything is like separated. When you talk about Yoast, okay, this week I'm going to work on Yoast, and it's just that bit. And WordPress is separated by parts. It's like you can choose, okay, today I'm going to work on this part, and the other day I'm going to work on that part. And I understood most of what you said. Thank you. And you clarified my questions. And I'm going to work to be known.
I found for me that the best way to get customers for me in the business that I do is a mixture of both. So I try to keep my website up to date, but actually most of the people that I get is either through word of mouth or networking. And the website is like an addition to that, so it just gives some extra information. I also use my website, my personal Spin My Plates website, for experimenting with things that might or might not work. So if there's the new fun thing that's in fashion to do in the SEO world and everyone says this is working really well, I'll have a little play with it. So I use my website for a very different purpose to how you might use yours. So it really is, you know, it's not the most important thing in the world necessarily. It really depends on where you get your customers from and what you want the website to do. And that's why when people ask me for help with their website, I quite often say to them, well, what is it that you want it to do? Because it's like an employee. So if you want it to bring customers, you have to teach it to work at that. It has to do the job. If you just want it to give a bit of information, so you hand out your business card and say, hey, look, I haven't had time to talk to you about everything I do, but there's some interesting articles on my website, go have a look. And people obviously do a little bit of online stalking. If they're interested in you, they will look at your website. So it is useful to have one, but it's not the be all and end all of everything business.
Okay.
Claire, could I just ask something else? And it links with what Anna said about changes to the website. With lockdown, a lot of us are reinventing what we do. So I had an idea of Elizabeth Hartley online coaching. It sounds like for indexing purposes and history on Google, it's best not to change your name, but perhaps change a page, add a page, update a page rather than a whole new business name.
Again, that depends on your business. If you're completely rebranding, then you wouldn't want to confuse potential customers with having a website name that doesn't mean anything to your business anymore. So if you're doing like a complete overhaul and a rebrand, then it is probably better to start again. If you are using the same content, this is where it gets difficult because Google doesn't like duplicated content. So you can't really copy and paste stuff into another website. So if you start again, you really would have to start again.
Okay. Yeah, it would be the same content.
Completely delete the coaching center and use that content somewhere else, and eventually Google will catch up, but it will be a slower process because Google will already recognize and have cached versions of the website that no longer exists, and it won't know what it's supposed to do. So it's like you have to teach it basically.
Okay, thank you.
I can hear birds tweeting.
I've got birds here, so it could be me. It's lovely.
Yeah, mine are not tweeting today, they're too wet. So, Janet and Amanda.
Yeah. We did have Olivia Ford did join us right at the beginning. I don't know if somebody noticed when we were talking about insurance and stuff, but then she bombed out. I've noticed that on a few meetings, people, when right at the beginning when there was a lot of people, if we were talking about stuff that wasn't about the talk, people dipped in and dipped out. So
It can be